We were talking earlier about how it's about time we had a performing arts center. Do you know what the largest city in the nation is without a performing arts center? It's this town, okay? Well, they looked at doing this in 1996. So a person named Lorraine Stevens was hired by then Mayor Nelson Wolff, and he asked her to do a survey of all the event venues in San Antonio to try to determine if we had a place that could be a performing arts center. And when they got finished with the study, they came to the realization that we really politically were not ready for this yet. They did some polling and said that any venue, any tax like that wouldn't pass, so they tabled it for a while. And in 2007, San Antonio hired a fellow named Richard Florida, you may have heard of. He writes about the creative economy, to come in and do a seminar to talk about how you create an environment in San Antonio that would really attract top executives and companies to move in. Because studies show that for a company to relocate here, they want their employees to feel like that their kids are being raised in an environment that's creatively very stimulating. And studies show very distinctly that when students study the arts, whether it's visual arts or performing arts, they do better in their other classes because they get creative and it carries over to the STEM classes. So to have a creative economy that's successful is just so important in our environment here. So they started a cultural collaborative and did a study and started to implement these projects. And two of them were the study for the Performing Arts Center, and the other was for a public art committee. And you'll love this. You see the picture over there of the Sebastian sculpture? That was given by an artist from Mexico City to San Antonio, and they said, here, you're going to put it here. And we went, okay. And San Antonio had no way to review public art or what to take, because some public art might create a huge maintenance problem. So now we have a committee that studies this so that when public art is put out, there's a maintenance program for it, the right materials are used, and we don't end up with a haphazard collection of art around the city. But more importantly, I think, is that they did a study and they got ready to upgrade Lorraine Stevens' study to see, do we have a place that can be used? And the conclusion was that we didn't. I'll give you an example. If you talk to Jack Fishman, he's the executive director of the symphony, and you ask him, how does the symphony sound in the Majestic? And he'll tell you by saying, just remember that the Majestic was built for silent movies. Not a great place, but it's a place where they have been able to be. But with the plaster walls and the reverberation, you really can't hear everything the symphony's doing. And if you heard a performance there, depending on where you're sitting, you'll hear different instruments, but collectively you don't hear it all balanced. Well, the purpose of a performing arts center is so that you can hear every note. Very well tuned, very balanced. And what this will do is this will make them more successful because their product will be better, and just simply stated. So you'll hear every good note. You'll also hear a bad note. That's called a clam, bad note to the musician. So they'll have to get better because you'll hear everything. So we updated the study, and then they took it to the county, and the county decided that the venue tax, which built the AT&T Center, that's a real popular tax. You know why? Yeah, tourists pay it, exactly. Well, occasionally we pay it if we go stay downtown or we rent a car. But it's a very easy tax for us to authorize when we pull the lever because we're not paying it. And then the visitor doesn't really notice it that much because it's not onerous. Well, since the tax was paying off the AT&T Center early, they wanted to extend it for four things. The river, $125 million to extend the river to the south, to the Mission Reach. Building $80 million of sports complexes for basically the youth all around town. To develop a maintenance kind of, I guess, endowment for that whole county area where the AT&T Center is, the Joe Freeman Coliseum. They need to renovate that eventually. They've got a new equestrian complex that can be used for meetings, so that's a really cool thing they've done there. And $100 million for a performing arts center. So here we were politically in about 2009, ready to vote and ready to go finally after all these studies. And the timing we think is really right for this because the pieces are all there. One thing we learned studying all the arts groups is everybody, museums, all types of arts groups, they hold their donors close to their vest because they don't want anybody, to get their donors' money. Well, they're all the same donors. San Antonio has an interesting base of ownership. It's some companies, some foundations, and a few individuals. And what's missing in this town is giving by the individual. And there is a new mechanism called the fund that comes to employee workplaces where they can give, like the United Way, to the arts. And if somebody gives $5 a month, $60 a year, they get a card, and they get discounts at museums and at performances. And so what it does is it creates more of an interest of individuals in the arts, and it builds a constituency for the groups. They sell more tickets, and they have their handout lists for donations. So this whole developing individual giving is starting up, and that's important for the Tobin Center to work, because we need people to go and support the symphony, the ballet, the opera, the youth orchestra, the classic theater, the chamber orchestra, on and on and on. All these different groups are going to be using this Performing Arts Center. So that's kind of where we are today. Now, what the city and county realized is they shouldn't be running a Performing Arts Center, okay? You wouldn't hire the city or the county to run the SABOR, would you? They have a hard enough time running what they're doing, and they got their hands full. So they started a nonprofit called the Bear County Performing Arts Center, and they actually own the buildings and the land. The city gave it to them, and the county gave $108 million. They added $8 for the river portal to this foundation, and we're raising another $54 million to complete the project. So in essence, it's about a $203 million project. So that's your background just on how we got here today. This is just a picture of the Tobin Center, what the front will look like. We were lucky that in the late 70s, the municipal auditorium burned down. And I'll tell you why. Because if it didn't burn down, we couldn't touch it. It would be a historical building. And if you're going to build a performing arts center with good acoustics, you couldn't do it in this. Tommy Lee Jones came in and we were looking at it. He says, what are you going to do with this airplane hangar? Okay, low ceiling, 4,900 seats. It was built for circus performances. They had circuses in there and boxing matches. So the acoustics were horrible. It was terrible. So, but the good news is we get to keep the front. It did not burn. So the iconic front that we always know and love and remember with those two little domed rooms, that stays. And so everything else will be new. They'll kind of give you a picture of what happens. There's the whole front. What's interesting is from the front where you go into the new big theater, we've got a kind of a curtain veil around the part going up because it has to go much taller than it is now. Because to have good acoustics, you need height to get the right reverberation. And so this will tone it down from the front so it'll look like the municipal auditorium and not something else. All those will be LED lighted so at night it can show up in different colors. So it's just beautiful. Now from the back, it'll look completely different because the back part is what burned. Now the river right now, if you were to walk down the river, and let's say I'm facing going downstream, there's a 20-foot wall running across the river. You don't even know the municipal auditorium is up there. There's no connection to the river. But if you'll remember, a 20-foot, 4-foot tunnel was built under the city to carry the floodwaters. So now we're going to be allowed to lower that wall. So this will all open up to the river now. So it'll connect the river from downtown and the museum reach. And so it's going to have this new look from the river, but the old look from the front. So it's an interesting challenge to fit these two together. There's your old municipal auditorium, built in 1926. It was dedicated to the World War I veterans. And of course, it's held concerts, graduations, all kinds of things in the past. So everybody has a fond memory of it for one reason or another. This is what it looked like when they were reconstructing it after the fire. So it just burned everything out very badly. Now what's really, here's what we get to start with though. If you look, we kept those little outer walls and we kept the front. But what that did is it left the whole middle of the building for us to reconstruct something. So right now, if you look from the back side, it kind of looks like a old bullfighting arena, or what's left of it. But you can see the domed areas, the rotundras, and there's the front. Now, this is what's really cool, is the architect was brilliant. They took this main new hall and they shifted it this way. That leaves enough room for a studio theater. So we can have two theaters in this. So one is going to be 1,750 seats. This thing has a little, nope, oops. There it is. And now I'm going to really get tricky. Watch out, Greg. Now I'm really fancy. So this is the 1,750-seat theater, and this is the 250-seat theater. And because we rotated it this way, it gives a river plaza opened up to the river. So there's enough room. If we'd gone straight back, it would have crowded it. So there's going to be actually a third theater here. It'll be about a 600-seat outdoor theater. So we'll have 3 events we can put on at one time, and they're all acoustically isolated. So it's just brilliant work that they did. When you walk into the lobby, it's going to be this beautiful, spacious, open area. Before it was deconstructed, there were 3 square feet per person in the lobby. That's why you didn't go. If you went out there, you'd be like this. So people stayed inside at intermission and just talked. Well, now when you go out, you can buy a drink, get something to eat, move around freely, and it's going to be a great experience. One thing I want to mention about the experience is that Rodney Smith was our first managing director, and he unfortunately passed away of a heart attack a year and a half ago. Rodney was a visionary, and he helped design this. He came from Denver. And he had a real big theory here, is that it's not just the symphony or ballet or whatever group you're going to hear that's the experience. It's the entire experience you have. So when you call up to buy a ticket, we're going to control all the ticket sales, not ticket masters. Somebody who knows what you want is going to answer the phone. And what's the main reason people don't like to go downtown? Right. They don't get, why is parking an issue? The only times they come down is when there's a parade. There's 500,000 people there. Of course there's no parking. But there's really plenty of parking downtown. But when you buy your ticket, we'll ask you, would you like to have a specific parking place? So we'll sell you a parking place to go exactly where you want to go before the show, so you're not looking around for a space. That's part of the experience right there before you get there. Then you walk up, and you see this beautiful outside. You walk into the interior. Wow. There are going to be twice as many women's rooms as men's rooms. So you don't have you ever gone to the Majestic and you were a woman? Right over the restroom? It's all part of the experience. You've got to treat your client right. When you walk in, you'll be greeted. Then you'll have this wonderful performance where you'll hear everything. And then you'll go on a nice break out here in the lobby, go back here the rest of it. You'll leave, you'll turn around, back around and go, what did I just go through? And when you get home, you'll go, wow, I'm going to do that again. So it's really a big experience. It's more than just the performance. We'll talk about some other things we're going to be doing in a minute. This is another view of the interior lobby where the donors wall is, where major donors' names will be. This is a donors lounge, which this is a view from up top looking down. This is the main hall, and HEB was kind enough to give $5 million, so the main hall is named after them. But what's really interesting about this is a multi-purpose theater. It has to work for unamplified music and amplified music. So when the symphony's playing, the 2 lifts here come up. So the orchestra pit comes up, and a shell goes around them, so no sound goes up the stage fly. So in essence, they're playing into a room just built for them. All of these balconies here have these kind of cut wood fronts with lights, so we can change the mood anytime we want inside this. There are 750 raked seats. Raked means they're up like this so you don't look at the back of somebody's head instead of the performance. There's really something interesting happening here. Now let me tell you there's not one performing arts center in the United States that makes a profit. And I'll tell you why. 70% of our nights are for our resident non-profit performing art groups. We can't charge them commercial rates. So we're going to make 25% of our money renting it out 70% of the nights. What a business model. Doesn't work, does it? Well, we have the fortunate luck of having this technology that's now available and proven in Canada and Europe. With the push of a button, all 750 raked seats, 1 row at a time, will lift up, the seats will flip under, and in 18 minutes we will have a flat floor. Wow. Okay, so when the symphony's playing, what can we do? We're getting a low rate, we're helping the symphony out. They practice in the morning, they practice in the afternoon, they play at night. But with the flat floor, what we can do is put tables out here for a lunch. So the night before the performance, we put the tables out with the flat floor. Not very labor intensive. It changes in 18 minutes. In Boston, it takes them 2 days to change it to a flat floor. Wow. Because it's all manual. So they leave for their practice in the morning, we have a catered lunch for 430 people. We have a kitchen for the caterer. We can make $10,000 to $15,000 by renting the facility out and getting a percentage of the catering like any facility would. So let's do the math. If we made $10,000 and we had 200 lunches, there's $2 million. So we have a way to make money off non-performing art functions. So now we can balance our budget. So that's what's so great about this is this will be a very functional building. Now when you have a regular performance, then you can change the acoustics. What happens is these big kind of carpet things come down on the side of the walls and it deadens the room. Because when the symphony plays, you need a 2.5 to 2.3 millisecond bounce. What does that mean? That's what they need. If the opera or the ballet plays, they have a stage fly. The symphony's in the orchestra pit. The sound comes up into the room, maybe a 1.9 millisecond bounce. If it's a rock concert, it needs a 1.0. So we'll be taking over this in the summer of 2014 and tuning it for the different performances. So it's a true multi-purpose venue. In this case also, we've got cabaret seating, and the symphony can do a pops thing like they do in Boston. That attracts a younger crowd. It builds their clientele. We have a smaller studio theater that has 250 seats, but it can be configured like this, or it can be in the round or a semicircle. It can be used for receptions, like in this case where it opens up into this lobby area. Then outside, you'll see right up here there's a 600-seat little theater outside with a big screen. So we can have another venue, a movie, or let's say the opera sells out with a huge star. Well, for a lesser price, we could put some seats out here with a good sound system. They can watch the opera out here. There's all kinds of functions that can be here. It can be arranged in fiesta booths. It can have a tent put over it. You can have an outdoor dinner. You know, not August 5th, but maybe starting in November. So this is going to be beautiful. Imagine the river parade, which starts just right down this way. Coming by here, it's the first stop for the river parade. Okay, now a lot of people are asking us, especially the donors, you know, why are you building this? How do you know it's going to work? Why are you doing this? Because we can't just say, well, we know it's going to work. We have to have proof. Okay. It's a fact that great cities that have these performing arts centers, their groups start to flourish. Okay, they do better. My father had a good quote. He says the risk of not building the Tobin Center is greater than the risk of building it. In other words, build something that doesn't succeed is less of a risk than not having it at all. Right now, our audiences have never really had a true hub. We talked about hearing, what the Majestic was built for. This will be a place where they can really be heard and patrons know they can go to hear this be performed properly. So we're going to have a dazzling state-of-the-art venue, so it's going to really strengthen the culture of our performing arts. But very importantly, there's a very big educational component. I just got $1.5 million contribution given specifically to our education program to bring students into the center and let them experience these performances and go to seminars and get to hear lectures from the stars. And it's proven that if a child gets exposed to the arts, they'll be more likely to participate. If they don't, they think that's just for the elite, it's not for me. So our job is to help build their future audiences. And we can't do that without, you know, partnering with the non-performing arts groups and providing a way to do it. We're also going to economically increase the development of that area. They've already announced a new hotel right across the river. So things are going to happen. There's going to be a new parking garage that's going to go up here. Their plans are underway for that. So now everybody said, well, how do you know it's going to work? Okay, well, we went to other cities and we looked. The second point is important. In New York City in '56, they built the Lincoln Center. That was the first modern performing arts center. And ever since then, they've been built across the country. And it's shown that in Nashville, for example, this is what they built for the symphony. It's fairly new. Okay, the symphony that they had was struggling. It was bankrupt before. Does this sound familiar? Okay. Well, from 2000 to 2013, there's been over $3.4 billion invested in downtown Nashville since that center's been built. So it's a real catalyst for the neighborhood. Now the Symphony there has gone from selling 1.5 million tickets a year to 7.5 million tickets a year, dollar to dollar. So this is the best example. But it shows that when you give them a new venue, they flourish. It's not just an accident that that happened. Okay, their budget went from 6.5 million to 27 million, and their assets went from 4 to 124. Now the big jump there is they actually own the hall. Okay, here we're not going to put these performing art groups into the real estate business. They can focus on what they're doing. We'll provide the venue. Takes them out of that risk. They look at the endowment at the Symphony in Nashville. It's now $95 million. We don't have an endowment at our Symphony yet, but we'll get one. They have a full 83 member orchestra, but right now, back then they were similar to our size, about 70. So when we did the Beethoven concerts last year, we had to bring in about 8 or 9 musicians just on a temporary basis to pull those off. And again, contributions increased 150% every year. This is the kind of impact. This is just their studies: 27 million in expenditures, 783 jobs, so on and so on. Now, another example, Kansas City. This is their venue, okay? The ballet and the lyric opera it's the home for them, and they flourished. It parallels the Tobin Center organization. They're going to be, the primary residents. The Symphony too. Their mayor states how much it's done for the city. So we want to have to the large donors, statements from people that are on the line saying this worked. It changed everything. So if it's happening in these other cities, it's going to happen here. There's just a feeling of, what the ballet may look like on stage. The Kaufman Center, again, their ticket sales increased. Their Nutcracker doubled. Not quite the Nashville example, but a good example. Their Symphony's revenue went up significantly. This is very interesting. Single ticket sales. Those are the ones you kind of sell at the last. Those are really important, especially to fill up the house. Their single ticket sales went up quite a bit. So that's a big plus when you can sell single tickets. Again, there's their impact numbers. I won't bore you with those. They created 237 jobs. 0.8 jobs. I kind of... What's missing? Oh, maybe they're not full-time, I guess. Just kind of a feeling of what the opera might look like. My wife's funny. She says about opera, she says, God didn't make people to sing that way. The point what I'm making here is that we did a study, and the people that back symphonies, ballets, and operas, there's only about a 20% crossover. They really appeal to different audiences. So it's just a fact. It's a national statistic. Okay, Bass Hall. Everybody's probably heard of that. You may have seen it. That's in Fort Worth. Beautiful place. Again, they had the Symphony was in a 300-seat county-owned facility, and they went down to a 200-seat venue with superb acoustics, and it became home for the Texas Ballet, the Fort Worth Opera, and so similar situation. It's an icon for the city. They think it brings 600,000 people into downtown every year. That's really important. Let me talk a little bit about downtown San Antonio. Is that people, especially out way north of 1604, they don't even come downtown. They won't even come south of 410. And there's just that fear, where am I going to park? What is it for me? Well, if we can start bringing our own citizens downtown, and we can start developing a community with about 10,000 residents in the area, we can have grocery stores, we can have a viable downtown community. For a city to be successful, they always have to have a viable downtown community. We have about 2,500 units now, and we're rising, and the goal is in the next 10 years to get closer to 10,000. This is showing what Bass has done to downtown Fort Worth. Again, you can see the Symphony. Their ticket sales went up dramatically. The orchestra for the, I'm not familiar with this slide. Okay, their budget was 8.1 million. It's now 10.1. And so they feel that the visitors are spending about 7 million a year. They're creating 470 jobs. Kind of similar statistics. Okay, so there's your Tobin Center. Again, just to look at it from the outside, you're going into the front for the big building. Now the symphony here, let's talk about here, we think that their ticket revenues will increase pretty quickly from 2.2 to 3.3 million. Now, right now, have you heard the symphony with their new conductor, Sebastian Lang Lessing? He is amazing, okay? Go see him. He's getting music out of these musicians I've never heard before. He's on contract to be here when it moves into the Tobin. It's going to be incredible. Also, more importantly, their donations are going to go up too. That will create a good environment for them. Julian Castro, as the predecessor, Phil Harberger, were both on board with this. He's way behind this. I don't know how many of y'all heard him speak at the Democratic Convention. What I thought was cool about it, he said San Antonio 11 times. He knows his job. Okay, he did not lose track of that. And his brother mentioned it too. So it was really cool. For San Antonio, that was a big deal. Doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, that helped out San Antonio. I think more people will watch that than maybe the football game that they had at the same time. I wonder if the NFL is Republican. Okay, this is kind of interesting. 2007 is when our nonprofit was formed. Okay, the voters approved $100 million. The city gave $41 million. Tobin is the naming gift. Robert Tobin set up an endowment at his death and gave the $15 million to name it. And the total project is $203 million. Okay, this is our board of directors, and I'm going to apologize right now to James Calloway. Somehow we lost the first letter of his name. It's not Ames, it's James. If it was Ames, the A would be capitalized, I guess. So, good group of folks helping us. Take a second to look at that. Bill Maul's an interesting fellow. He's the CEO of KLRN. Used to be with Clear Channel. So he's giving us a lot of good background on marketing and getting our image out there. And so it's a really great group to work with. Here's how the money gets used, too. 108 from Bexar County. We're raising 54. The total cost of the money spent is $162 million. We're not including the city's gift of the land and the buildings. Okay, it's $143 million to plan, architecturally design, and build this building. We have an endowment that we're agreeing to of $10 million. We're going to probably, we need to double that, but we didn't want to have a goal that was unachievable in our agreement. The foundation will cost about $8 million between when it started till we get it built and operating, because of the cost of construction and managing it. It's fairly expensive. And then we have $1 million for interest expense, which is a little high, but when we get these pledges that are for 5 years, at some point in the project, our building costs are going to exceed the pledge funding, so we'll be borrowing on those pledges at some point. We haven't had to do that yet. I'm surprised that we haven't. Now, again, flat floor is ways we're going to make money. We're also going to have a concert series. We'll have some Broadway productions. One of the questions we always get, are you going to compete with the Majestic? And the answer is no. They will have the big Broadway shows. Our Broadway productions will be smaller musicals. And somebody asked me, why wouldn't they want to perform here? Well, it's all M-O-N-E-Y. They can sell 2,300 tickets at the Majestic, but they can sell 1,750 at the Tobin. They're going with the money. That's why we probably won't get the NCAA men's basketball tournament again. It's going to Jerry Jones' place, because with 100,000 seats, there's more money. Although we think we're going to have Lyle Lovett, I hope, open the thing, and he can sing that song, M-O-N-E-Y. Some popular artists, like Lyle, I hope. Family shows, special events, and the flat floor. Big deal. Other thing is in over the first 10 years, we want to have over 1 million children come through this, young students, and be exposed to the performing arts. School districts keep cutting the budgets for the arts, so other groups need to pick up the slack. That's what we're going to try to help do. Research shows that, we talked about this, that look at the highest rate of admittance to medical schools in biochemistry because they're exposed to the arts. We lost part of that slide there, but it just talks about basically students do better when they learn about the arts. They did studies and showed that all these levels and skills improve when the arts are introduced into a child's development. More information. They're just looking at all different kinds of angles. It just, everything helps. What we're going to do for the children, reduce price for complimentary tickets. We'll actually pay for the school buses to come in, because The schools don't have the budget to do that. Activities geared for children and families, summer camps, after-school programs, master classes. We'll actually have continuing education for teachers. Another thing we could do is if we had a big function that attracted a crowd that had a lot of kids, well, we could have a movie for them in the smaller theater while the adults are watching the opera. So we think we're going to leave a lasting legacy here in South Texas. These are the major gifts that come from these folks so far. We're in a silent phase. The next phase we're going into is this ambassador program where we're coming out and educating everybody about the Tobin Center, because if we're going to be successful, y'all need to know about it and talk about it. This also, we think, really will help your industry, because when you're trying to attract clients to move to San Antonio, you have another tool in your bag to say, look what we have in San Antonio. We have a great environment for bringing up your families. After this, we'll go into a box phase. Once the place is almost finished, the people can stand in their boxes. They'll tend to buy those when they can see their seat and see where they're looking. And then the last part raises the least amount of money, but it's the most important. That's the public phase, where we may get only $1.5 million, but hopefully from 20 or 30,000 individuals. And that'll really develop a contingency to come in and support these groups. Things like you can have your name put on a seat and it'll be there for 10 years. Things like that, where you can feel like you're really part of it. And that's where we are right now on 700 North St. Mary's, but you might have seen on the news that the fire department has moved out into their new location. So we just took a look at it, and we're going to see what we can do to quickly get it ready and move our offices to the building right next to the Tobin's. That's coming up. So I want to open it up for questions, because there's a lot of stuff going on here, and if I don't know the answer, I can probably make one. Yeah.
Hi, I moved here from Dayton, Ohio. And Dayton, Ohio, about 15 years ago, went through this process and built an absolutely beautiful thing. But they had an infrastructure that supported it. They had, whether it was the local schools or the local community, summer stock or everything else. So all of that fed into them. And it really is a beautiful venue that they have there. When I moved here to San Antonio, one of the first things I did was I went downtown to find the arts, the entertainment, this kind of a thing, because one of the things that I always did was I always bought season tickets to the opera, to the symphony, to the plays, and I had like 6 or 7 different venues. But with that, I also bought the seats. So I always bought 2 seats, so I always knew where my seats were in advance, kind of thing. And that was always neat to me, because you started in the back of the theater when you first got your tickets, and then you advanced it year after year. You got better and better and better seats, but they were your seats for that venue. Are you going to have something similar like that?
Well, we've talked about that, but I can't really give you a seat for the venue, because what about the symphony that wants that seat? Or what about the opera? So each one of those venues is going to be somewhat in control of their seats.
Oh, no, what I'm saying is, like, for the opera, I sat in these 2 seats.
Well, and here's how cool it's going to be. We've just purchased a system. It's called a patron relationship management system. It's not just ticketing. It's social media and internet networks. It's a website for each of the groups. It manages our patrons, whether they're ticket purchasers or donors. So when you go in to purchase tickets, if you get subscriptions, you'll be able to pick your seat and work that out with them. But also, if you want to come into an event, it'll be internet driven to where you will have a virtual look at what tickets are available, and you'll be able to grab seats that you want. So if you don't want to get a permanent seat by buying a subscription with the symphony, opera, ballet, etc., you still can go in, if you go in early, and probably get some really good seats that you want. So we're trying to make it really interactive and kind of put you in the driver's seat, so that if you want to deal directly with that entity, you can. So we want to try to stay out of their way, but also provide whatever they didn't pre-sell to the person who wants to buy tickets, and put it right out on the plate for them. So it's a really interesting thing. And another thing we looked at Bass Hall, what they do, let's say you have a show that's not going to sell out. Well, what you want to do, even regardless of the price, if you know that, you want to sell all the tickets on the floor. And then you kind of deaden the top part, and when everybody gets there, it feels like it's full. Otherwise, if you're just selling based on price and area, with 800 people in a 1,750 seat facility, you'd be patchwork, you have empty seats all around. So there's a real science to this, and this system has that built into it, but we still have a real professional managing that very task. But it's very well pointed out. Now there is a website, the saarts.com, where you can go and look for arts events all over town. And since we're going to run the ticketing system, right now, if you want to see the symphony, you've got to go through Ticketmaster. The city of San Antonio has a deal with Ticketmaster, and it's $9 a ticket. That's pretty expensive. We're going to be a lot less than that. And then our clientele will be treated to a group of people. If you're not going to go on the internet and you want to talk to a person, it'll be a staff that is selling tickets for this facility, whereas with Ticketmaster, if you're buying a ticket for the symphony, that person may have just sold somebody with a pin through their nose a punk rock ticket, you know, so they're not maybe in the mood to talk to you. Now, if we have a punk rock band, we'll be able to sell them tickets too, but we're geared toward your kind of crowd, you know, what you want to see. And it's going to lower the costs for the groups when they don't have to have their customers pay a $9 fee. They're going to be more successful. So it really helps. Another thing is that the Majestic, those suites that are up in that first level of the balcony, that's money goes to the Majestic to make them successful. Well, in the Tobin Center, the box income will all go to the entity that's selling the tickets. And if you say you buy a box, and you might pay $500,000 to buy a box, it's not like the Spurs where you buy it every year. That purchase is to help build the building. And what buying the box gives you the right to is buying the tickets in the box. But unlike the Spurs, you don't have to buy them. So if you don't take them, then they go back on sale to the group or to the public. So we're always rotating this out. So the symphony is going to make more money because the box income is going to go to them. And it's not going to go to another entity because we're a nonprofit. We're not a for-profit. So that's an excellent observation. And I think that you'll find that all the groups will become more successful because of the facility. And it's like a new restaurant. When a new restaurant opens, you notice how it's always crowded. And then if the food's bad, it thins out pretty quick. But if the food's good, it stays full. Well, there's always a wow effect when you build one of these. So the first 3 years, they'll have a big surge, and they'll improve. But you've really got to keep working on it to keep it there. And that's why this education program, we're going to be running people through here and trying to keep the seats full because it's not automatic. It's really only automatic for about 3 years. So unless you really work at it. Yes, sir.
In many cities where they're spread out as we are, and in the Midwest and West, cities cover huge geographic areas, because it is difficult for people to come from the outlying districts into downtown because of parking, a whole bunch of reasons, they provide buses or rent buses for the night of the event so that people might go to the shopping center up here by I-10 and 1604 where you've got room to park a whole bunch of people, and you fill up 10 or 15 buses and it's just an easy trip downtown and the people don't have to worry about fighting the traffic and stuff. Are you considering doing anything like that?
We're looking at working partnerships with different areas in town to do that. Sometimes you'll sponsor it with a large restaurant, a shopping center, but an area that, for instance, one of the shopping centers, generally they're pretty thin on parking at night, so it's a great place to park and come down. The other thing that's really important is Keith Parker, who runs our VIA here, he's introducing rail. And in all the towns where they add rail to buses, what happens is the middle and the upper class starts riding the transit system. And, you know, right here in this town, we're known as just a bus system. So how many of y'all ride the bus? Okay? Am I making my point? But if you start having a rail, then people will start riding it. And the example of where we're first going to start is people might drive to Pearl and take the rail down, but it'll stop 1 block from the Tobin Center, right on Broadway and 4th. So not only are we going to have partnerships to bring people down in buses, but I think our transit system is going to become more conducive to the general public. Because if anybody's been to San Francisco, you ride the bus there all the time. Everybody rides the bus. Or, you know, I always say having a car in New York City is like owning a kite in a pine forest. It makes no sense. Well, here, since we're so spread out, like you put it, we're also car-driven. And so I think that this vision that Keith has, he's going to make the transit system work for more people. It's going to be cool. Yes.
How did you decide on a number of 750 seats?
1750?
Right. And how does that compare to the numbers in Kansas City, Dallas, and Nashville?
Okay. The trend right now is to build venues under 2,000 seats. So that's the trend. We also polled the symphony, ballet, and opera, and that's about the size that they wanted. They want a place that sells out all the time. They can get a little bit more for a ticket, and they can have more performances. So it wasn't just guessing. We were looking at the national trend, and we were going with what the needs were of the community. Bass Hall, I think, is a couple thousand seats. The Shimmerhorn's probably right around there. But lately, the venues have been around 16 to 1,800. So there was a lot of work put into that. We also didn't want to compete with the 2,500, 2,300 seat venues we already have, the Majestic, the Lila, and Laurie. We purposely wanted to fit into the community and not run people out of business or vice versa. So that's a good question. Now, interestingly enough, when the orchestra pits are up and the symphony's playing, it's really only 1,630 seats. When the orchestra pits are all the way down for the opera or ballet, it goes up a little bit. But when you put the orchestra pits at audience level and you add seats for like a rock concert or a performance of any type, then it goes to 1,760. So it's kind of variable depending on what kind of venue you have. And then if somebody just wants to have a venue and they're only going to sell 800 seats, we just darken the top up and it appears to be very full. So that's how we came up with it. And it went back and forth for a while.
This will be the newest venture, or the newest center in the United States. How do you feel about comparing it to others at this stage?
Well, that's kind of the cool thing. I think the thing that will help the most is, one, it'll bring in some acts that you normally wouldn't get because they'll want to play in the state-of-the-art venue in the United States. It'll probably have the best acoustics, have the best bells and whistles, and it'll probably be for a long time because all the major cities have one now. So who's going to build a better one? It could be 20 years. The other thing I think that's really important is that we're going to attract some really good labor because of this. One of the key people is the operations person that does all the booking and planning for programming. There's probably 30 people in the United States that are really good at that, and I bet half of them would jump at the chance to come and grab onto a center like this. So that'll really defeat our challenge of, do you want to come to a town where these performing arts groups have been struggling? Because at first, somebody will be taking a risk, and the fact that the facility is so cool, we think it's going to outweigh that risk. So it's a big selling point for us. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the studio theater. Do we have a group that's going to go in there too, just like the symphony? Or
okay. The youth orchestra may play in it some, and they may play in a larger some. The classic theater will probably be playing in there a lot. A lot of the colleges may want to have events in there. There's a group, a nonprofit that has just kids and plays. I think they recruited 100 young women to be in this theater group, so they can come there. And imagine, kids from 8 to 10 years old or 12 years old that can come and act in a facility like this. So the smaller theater is really a bigger educational component than the bigger theater is. And in all of these facilities, the smaller theater is always the most booked facility. It costs less money, and a lot of the groups that use it, like the youth orchestra, we love them. They want to book the place on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday when you couldn't rent anything on a bet, because the parents are going to come see the kids play whenever, and the kids aren't going to play on a weekend. So there's kind of a balance to this, and that educational component will keep that theater very full. And again, the seats are portable, so we'll be able to change the format of it or store them all out of the way for reception or whatever very quickly. And that theater can be rented more than once in a day also. It has all these good acoustics in it too. It doesn't have a stage fly, but it has a lot of good lighting and acoustics. Does that help?
It helps.
Okay.
I'm just thinking more of theater and plays and things like that, since we don't have a regional theater in the area.
Well, that might happen. I know what Tommy Lee is interested in is getting a real good repertory theater started. He wouldn't really do the theater, but he could attract the actors to come in. because the really famous actors like to go to a place to kind of prove their chops, so to speak, and they don't like doing it in New York anymore because of the income tax and things like that. So we could attract some pretty interesting artists to come in and do a lead part with a repertory group. So we think that kind of a venue will happen because of the facility being there. There are a lot of smaller theaters, you know, like San Antonio Playhouse. And of course, the best example of a successful theater in San Antonio is Magic Theater, and they're all about education. And there are buses outside every day of that facility. And Richard Rosen, really, he's running a great theater there. But they'll mainly stay there, but they may end up having a couple big productions at the Tobin, because it's available. We're going to actually have a 3-tiered rental policy. The resident art groups form 70 to 80% of their events with us will have the lowest rate. But just a nonprofit will have a lower rate than the commercial rate. So it'll be a 3-tiered rate system to try to favor nonprofits.
Just curious, one of the things I found moving to San Antonio was that it's a little more casual than other places. You know, we used to get dressed up, we wore black tie to go to the symphony and stuff.
So I don't have to put this on?
You know, and I noticed here that even attending some of the symphonic programs here in town, that people sort of, you know, some people come into the thing with shorts on, you know, kind of stuff. And how do you move the clientele into an atmosphere where, you know, these kind of shows can, particularly like the opera and stuff, that,
Yeah, I don't think we've tackled dress codes or anything yet. We probably would leave that up to each group. But I know that the donors lounge and the boxes are on a tier to connect to each other and have that lobby. So I guess the people that have to wear sequins and tuxes, if they want to be with themselves, they can go spend a lot of money. I'm going to probably be down in the lobby with a nice pair of slacks and a Tommy Bahama shirt, even if it's a symphony playing. Because I'm in public funds. That means cities, counties, school districts, they're taxing entities. We have to bid on, we have to put up collateral. And I quit wearing a suit because when you get around people in the public fund industry and you're wearing a suit, they think you're a politician who's trying to get elected. And so I just kind of am casual like they are usually. I see your point, and there is kind of a different lobbies and areas to kind of cope with that on its own, I think.
I was just thinking about that. In other words, in the East, they just dressed it.
Right. We like to wear shorts down here because it's pretty damn hot. I have a friend named Mike Williams, and he just finished living in New York City for a while. But we were in Nashville, and we went to a really cool club where a lot of folk musicians play. And he always wears shorts, and it's snowing outside, and the guy's got shorts and tennis shoes on. I'm like, going, you're nuts. I don't even think he owns a pair of pants. But, yeah, you're right. We're casual down here. I don't think that's going to change. Any other questions?
How much do you have to donate to be eligible for the donors lounge?
Well, you know, that kind of depends. I know, I think one of the boxes maybe is $250,000 on the side, but you can end up in the donors lounge if you actually probably bought a ticket up at that level. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, but it's not going to be that snooty. And the other thing is you've got to have venues for different functions. So there's a rotunda on each side of the entrance, and there's a donors lounge. So we can have 3 functions going on before and or after or during the performance. So there really will be 3 places to go and mingle apart from just the big lobby. But generally the donors lounge is for fairly large donors, but donors have guests. And my guess is that over the course of 2 or 3 years, we'll all get to go to the donors lounge. But I don't know if it's going to be that cool, but the ceiling looks pretty cool in on the drawing. I don't know if the drinks will be the same price or not. A lot of that needs to be worked out, but it's going to be, like your point is, it's going to be more casual and not that stiff.
Sounds like a great project. I can't wait for it to open. Awesome.
We're excited. So fall of 2014 it opens. There'll be a big event for about a week. Hopefully the symphony will have some big star there, and we'll have some different groups playing. We have a big donor who's going to help pay for opening events, acts. So we're not too sure. I know the chairman wants to get Paul McCartney, and I had to pull him aside and say, "You want to give another $1.5 million to go for it?" But quite a venue to have and just have 1,750 people. And it's good. We're going to be very close to each other. It goes up, but it's very intimate. It's close. So every seat will be great. I happen to be a musician. I play guitar. I write songs. I like it because I don't do it for a living. After college, I went to Chicago to be a musician. I didn't like it. I learned real quickly that I can make hundreds of dollars a year being a musician. But the cool thing is this theater is going to have such good acoustics that I can get on the stage with a guitar and sing, and you can be in any seat in that house, and we'll hear every note and word I say. Or if it's amplified, the same thing will happen. And if you're my age, bring a little cotton for your ears and hurt yourself.
Thank you.